Captain John Blake stood at the viewport of the UES Liberty, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The station stretched across hundreds of miles, its surface covered with towers that reached into space like metal fingers. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like insects around a bright light. "First time seeing anything like this, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from behind him. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back. In a tight military style, her voice carried a mix of wonder and worry. Blake nodded but did not turn around. He was 42 years old and had spent half his life in space, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. 3 months ago, Earth had received its first message from the stars. The Galactic Council wanted to meet with humanity. They called it a welcome interview for new species. Chief Engineer Paul Carter walked up to join them at the viewport. He was older than both of them, with gray hair and hands that showed years of working with machinery. "The power readings from that station are incredible," he said quietly. "They're using energy sources we can't even identify." Blake finally turned away from the view. The bridge of the Liberty was small compared to the alien ships they had passed on their way here. Earth's finest warship looked like a toy next to some of the vessels moving around. Nexus Prime. The thought made his stomach tight with worry. "How long until we dock?" he asked the navigation officer. 20 minutes, sir," came the reply. Blake walked to his command chair and sat down. He had read every file Earth's government had given him about this mission. The aliens had been polite in their messages, but had made it clear that humanity was expected to follow certain rules. They called humans a developing species that needed guidance from their betters. The docking process was smooth. The aliens had sent detailed instructions, and their technology made the Liberty's systems work perfectly with their station. As the ship settled into its assigned berth, Blake could see alien workers moving around outside. Some looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs. Others seemed to be made of living crystal that caught and reflected light. "Captain Blake," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message from the station. They want you to report to Council Chamber 7 in 1 hour. Blake stood up and straightened his uniform. The dark blue fabric bore the insignia of Earth Space Command, but he wondered if it would mean anything to the beings he was about to meet. "Rodriguez, Carter, you're with me. The rest of you stay with the ship and keep monitoring everything." The 3 humans left their ship through the docking tube and stepped onto Nexus Prime for the first time. The corridor was enormous, built for creatures much larger than humans. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift color as they walked. Soft light came from panels in the ceiling, but there were no visible light sources. Other aliens moved through the corridors around them. Most ignored the humans completely, though a few stopped to stare. Blake noticed that many of the creatures were much bigger than humans. Some stood 8 or 9 feet tall with thick, powerful bodies. Others moved with a grace that suggested they could be very dangerous if they wanted to be. Signs on the walls showed directions in dozens of different languages. Fortunately, one of them was English. The humans followed the signs toward the council chambers, walking through sections of the station that seemed to go on forever. "Captain," Amy whispered, "some of these aliens are wearing what looks like military uniforms." Blake had noticed the same thing. Many of the creatures they passed wore clothing that had the structured look of military dress. Medals and rank insignia covered their chests. Some carried weapons that hummed with energy. The message was clear. This was not just a diplomatic station. They reached Council Chamber 7 right on time. The doors were massive, at least 20 feet tall, and opened without any visible mechanism. Inside, the chamber was circular with a raised platform in the center. Seats arranged in rings around the platform held representatives from what Blake assumed were the 12 species that made up the Galactic Council. A creature that looked like a 7-foot-tall lizard with red scales stood up as the humans entered. Its voice was deep and carried clearly through the chamber's sound system. I am Ambassador Kethvar of the Sorak Empire. You are the representatives of the species called humans. It was not a question. Blake stepped forward and gave a slight bow. I am Captain John Blake of the United Earth Space Command. With me are Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez and Chief Engineer Paul Carter. We come on behalf of all humanity to meet with the Galactic Council. A sound that might have been laughter came from several of the alien representatives. Ambassador Kethvar's mouth opened to show rows of sharp teeth. United Earth Space Command, he repeated. How impressive that sounds. Tell us, Captain Blake, how many worlds does this command control? Earth is our home world, Blake replied. Carefully. We also have colonies and outposts throughout our solar system. One star system, said another voice. This came from a creature that looked like a giant insect with multiple arms and compound eyes. We are the Hive Queen Zarathis. Our domain includes 400 star systems and twice as many worlds. The Sorak control nearly as many. Even the smallest member of this council rules 50 systems. Blake felt his confidence shrinking, but he kept his voice steady. We are a young species. We have only recently developed the ability to travel between stars. Indeed, said a third voice, this one sounding like wind chimes. The speaker appeared to be made of shifting light and energy, beautiful but alien. I am Lyrismoon of the Ethereal Collective. We have studied your species from a distance. Humans show promise in some areas, but your technology is quite primitive by our standards. Your largest warship, Ambassador Kethvar continued, carries weapons that our children use for target practice. Your population is small, your industrial capacity limited, and your military experience consists mainly of fighting among yourselves. The words hit Blake like physical blows. He had known that humanity was behind the other species technologically, but hearing it stated so bluntly was humiliating. Beside him, he could feel Amy and Paul tensing with anger. However, the Hive Queen said, the Council is not without mercy. We are prepared to offer humanity a place in the galactic community. Blake straightened up. This was what they had come for. What kind of place? Ambassador Kethvar's teeth showed again. Junior membership. Humans would be responsible for mining operations in the outer systems, agricultural development on frontier, worlds, and basic manufacturing for more advanced species. In return, you would receive our protection and access to some of our older technologies. Protection from what? Blake asked. From species that are not as understanding as we are, Lyrismoon replied. The galaxy can be dangerous for weak civilizations. There are raiders, pirates, and worse things in the dark between stars. Under our guidance, humanity could survive and even prosper in whatever small way possible. Blake looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens. Every face or approximation of a face was watching him with expressions that ranged from boredom to amusement. None showed anything that looked like respect. We need time to consider your offer, he said finally. Of course, Ambassador Kethvar replied. You have 48 hours to give us your answer. We suggest you use the time wisely. Communications with your homeworld are available, though we will naturally monitor them for security purposes. As the humans left the chamber, Blake could hear quiet conversation behind them in languages he did not understand. But he did not need to understand the words to recognize the tone. The aliens were discussing humans the way people might talk about pets or livestock. Back on the Liberty, Blake immediately opened a secure channel to Earth as he waited for Admiral Lisa Hayes to appear on the screen. He wondered how he was going to explain what had just happened. How do you tell your superiors that humanity had just been offered the chance to become servants to the galaxy? Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching the holographic display that showed Captain Blake's face. Even through the long-distance transmission, she could see the anger and frustration in his eyes. Behind him, the bridge of the U.E.'s Liberty looked small and cramped compared to the alien technology they had just witnessed. "They want us to be their servants," Blake was saying. "Mining colonies, farming worlds, basic manufacturing. They made it sound like they were doing us a favor by not simply taking over our worlds by force." Hayes nodded grimly. She was 51 years old and had commanded Earth's defense forces for the past 8 years. In all that time, she had prepared for many possible scenarios involving first contact with aliens. Being offered the role of galactic janitors had not been one of them. "What's your assessment of their military capabilities?" she asked. Blake looked to his right, where Chief Engineer Paul Carter moved into view of the camera. "Admiral, their technology is centuries ahead of ours, maybe thousands of years. The power systems on their station alone could run every city on Earth for decades. Their smallest patrol ships have weapons that could destroy our largest battleships without effort. And they know about our capabilities? They've been watching us," Blake replied. "They know exactly how many ships we have, what weapons we carry, how fast we can travel between stars. They called our military experience fighting among ourselves, like it was some kind of joke." Hayes turned away from the communication screen and looked out at the blue curve of Earth below. In orbit around the planet, she could see the shapes of humanity's finest warships. The U.E.S. Defiant, their largest and most powerful vessel, looked impressive from here. But after hearing Blake's report, it seemed like nothing more than an expensive toy. "Captain, I need you to stall them," she said, turning back to the screen. "Accept their hospitality. Ask for tours of their facilities. Whatever you need to do to buy us time. Do not give them an answer for as long as possible." "How much time do you need, Admiral?" Hayes paused. What she was about to say would sound impossible to Blake and his crew. It would probably sound impossible to most people on Earth. 72 hours minimum. Longer if you can manage it, Blake frowned. "Admiral, with respect, what can we possibly do in 3 days that would make any difference? They have hundreds of ships, weapons we can't even understand, and the backing of 12 different spacefaring civilizations. Captain, there are things about Earth's military capabilities that are not in your mission briefing. Things that most people don't know about. I need you to trust me and buy us as much time as possible." After ending the communication with Blake, Hayes walked quickly through the corridors of the defense station. Her destination was a section that did not appear on any official maps, behind doors that required the highest security clearance in the human military. She passed through 3 separate checkpoints, each one scanning her biometrics and confirming her identity. The final door opened into a room where 3 people waited for her. General Robert Chun, a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes, stood near a large table covered with classified documents. Beside him sat Dr. Margaret Stone, the head of Earth's most secret research division. The third person was Colonel Ryan Walsh, commander of the experimental weapons program. "The aliens made their offer," Hayes said without preamble. "Junior membership, in exchange for manual labor. We have 48 hours to respond." General Chun leaned forward. "And if we refuse, they'll probably invade. They made it clear that weak species need protection whether they want it or not." Dr. Stone opened one of the folders on the table. "Then it's time to activate Protocol Lazarus." Hayes felt a chill run down her spine. Protocol Lazarus was the code name for humanity's most classified project. For 20 years, ever since the discovery of the derelict ship in the outer solar system, Earth's best scientists and engineers had been working on technologies that officially did not exist. Are they ready? Hayes asked. Colonel Walsh nodded. The 3 Titan-class vessels completed their final tests last month. We've been waiting for authorization to reveal them. Authorization granted, General Chun said. How long until they can? Reach the rendezvous point? The UES Titan, Goliath, and Behemoth can be at the edge of our solar system in 36 hours, Walsh replied. Their captains are already aboard and ready for deployment. Hayes looked at the classified photographs spread across the table. The images showed 3 massive ships, unlike anything in Earth's official fleet. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, with hull designs that seemed to blend human engineering with something far more advanced. They looked dangerous, even sitting in their hidden construction bays. What about crews? She asked. Hand-picked volunteers, Walsh answered. Every person aboard those ships has the highest security clearance and knows exactly what they're getting into. Captain Steve Mitchell commands the Titan, Captain Linda Foster has the Goliath, and Captain Nick Johnson leads the Behemoth. Doctor. Stone pulled out another set of documents. The technology integration is complete. The quantum displacement drives are working perfectly, and the weapon systems have exceeded all performance expectations. These ships represent a fusion of human, innovation, and alien engineering principles that we reverse-engineered from the derelict. Hayes remembered the day 20 years ago when a mining crew had found the ancient wreckage floating in the space between Pluto and Neptune. The ship had been dead for millennia, its crew long since turned to dust, but its technology was still functional. The discovery had changed everything for humanity, though only a few dozen people knew the truth. The aliens think they know everything about our capabilities, General Chun said. They've been watching our official fleet, our public research programs, our open military exercises. They have no idea what we've really been building. Colonel Walsh activated a holographic display that showed the solar system. 3 points of light appeared near the outer planets, moving slowly toward the edge of human space. The Titan-class ships use a completely different propulsion system than anything we've shown publicly. Their quantum drives don't produce the energy signatures that alien sensors are designed to detect. As far as the Galactic Council knows, Dr. Stone added, humanity just went quiet. They'll assume we're preparing to surrender, or maybe trying to evacuate our most important people. High studied the display. The 3 ships were moving through space in a way that would make them nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. Even Earth's own sensors had trouble tracking them when the quantum drives were fully engaged. What about their weapons? She asked. Walsh smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Each ship carries a primary plasma cannon capable of cracking small moons. The secondary weapons are kinetic accelerators that fire projectiles made from exotic matter. We've also installed defensive systems based on the alien shield technology we found on the derelict. The aliens won't know what hit them, General Chun said quietly. Hayes felt a mixture of excitement and fear. For 20 years, humanity had been preparing for the day when they would meet other intelligent species. They had assumed they would be the weaker party in any first contact scenario. The discovery of the derelict ship had changed those assumptions completely. There's something else, Dr. Stone said, pulling out a final folder. Our analysis of Galactic Council technology shows that they've been using the same basic principles for thousands of years. They're advanced, but they're also comfortable. They haven't had to innovate or adapt because they've been the dominant force in the galaxy for so long. They've never faced anything like what we're about to show them, Walsh added. Human weapons design philosophy is completely different from theirs. We build things to destroy our enemies as efficiently as possible. They build things to intimidate and control. Hayes nodded. How long can Captain Blake stall them? If he's clever, Maybe another day beyond their deadline, General Chun replied. But we need to assume they'll lose patience quickly once he refuses. Their offer. The Admiral walked to the window and looked out at Earth one more time. In a few days, everything would change. Either humanity would take its place as an equal member of the galactic community, or they would be fighting for their survival against forces that had ruled the stars for millennia. Send the activation codes, she ordered. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do. Captain John Blake stood once again in Council Chamber 7, but this time the atmosphere was different. The alien representatives sat in their seats like judges preparing to deliver a sentence. The 48 hours had passed, and everyone in the chamber knew that humanity's answer would determine the future of both species. Ambassador Kethver of the Sorok Empire leaned forward in his seat. His red scales seemed to gleam under the chamber's lights, and his yellow eyes fixed on Blake with predatory intensity. Captain Blake, the time for consideration has ended. What is humanity's response to our generous offer? Blake took a deep breath. He had spent the last 2 days touring the station, asking questions and generally trying to delay this moment as long as possible. Admiral Hayes had asked for time, and he had given her every minute he could manage. Now he had to deliver the answer that would either save his species or doom them. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Blake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Humanity has carefully considered your offer. We are grateful for your willingness to include us in the galactic community. The Hive Queen. Zarathis clicked her mandibles together in what might have been approval. Several other alien representatives nodded or made sounds that suggested satisfaction. They clearly expected Blake to announce humanity's acceptance of their terms. However, Blake continued, and the chamber fell silent. Humanity must respectfully decline your offer. We choose to stand as equals in the galactic community, or we choose not to participate at all. The silence that followed was so complete that Blake could hear the hum of the station's power systems. Then Ambassador Kethver stood up slowly, his massive frame towering over the human captain. You refuse? The Sorok ambassador's voice was dangerously quiet. You dare to refuse the protection and guidance of the Galactic Council? We refuse to be servants, Blake replied firmly. Humanity values freedom above safety. We would rather face the dangers of the galaxy as free beings than live safely as slaves. The Hive Queen's compound eyes seemed to glitter with anger. Your species lacks the wisdom to understand what you are rejecting. You will not survive alone in the galaxy. There are forces out there that will destroy you without hesitation. Lyris Moon of the Ethereal Collective spoke next, her voice like wind through crystal. This is most unfortunate. We had hoped to guide humanity toward a peaceful future. Ambassador. Kethver-Az's hands clenched into fists. Your answer is final? It is, Blake said. Then you have chosen destruction over wisdom, the Sorok ambassador declared. The Council will not allow a dangerous species to threaten galactic stability. If you will not accept our protection willingly, we will impose it by force. Blake felt his heart racing, but he kept his expression calm. That is your choice to make. Within minutes of Blake's declaration, emergency alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime, the massive space station which had seemed so peaceful. During Blake's visit, transformed into a military command center. Ships began launching from hidden bays, and communication channels buzzed with orders in dozens of alien languages. Ambassador Kethvar activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy with Earth marked as a small red dot. Admiral Zeth Gorn of the Depth Runners will lead a combined fleet to secure human space. The operation will begin immediately. Blake watched as the display showed hundreds of ships converging from different parts of the galaxy. Each vessel was larger than anything in Earth's official fleet, and many of them bristled with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The combined firepower heading toward Earth was overwhelming. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez said quietly, touching Blake's arm, "should we warn Earth?" Blake shook his head slightly. "They already know." Meanwhile, at the edge of human space, three massive shapes moved through the darkness between stars. The UES Titan, Goliath, and Behemoth traveled in perfect formation, their quantum displacement drives creating no energy signature that conventional sensors could detect. To anyone watching, they were simply empty space. Captain Steve Mitchell stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching the tactical display that showed the approaching alien fleet. At 38 years old, he had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, though he had never been certain it would actually come. The bridge around him was unlike anything in Earth's public fleet, with control systems that seemed to blend human engineering with something far more advanced. "Distance to the alien fleet?" Mitchell asked his tactical officer. 200,000 kilometers and closing, sir," Lieutenant Commander Chris Bailey replied. "They're maintaining standard formation, moving at approximately half-light speed." "Any sign they've detected us?" "None, sir. Their sensors are passing right through us." On the bridge of the UE's Goliath, Captain Linda Foster was having a similar conversation with her crew. At 42, she was the most experienced combat pilot in the human fleet, though most of her experience came from classified missions that officially never happened. Her ship held position slightly behind the Titan, ready to move at a moment's notice. "Engineering, what's the status of our weapon systems?" Foster asked. "All systems are green, Captain," Chief Engineer Kate Miller replied. "The primary plasma cannon is charged and ready. Secondary weapons are online and loaded with exotic matter ammunition. The third ship, the UES Behemoth, commanded by Captain Nick Johnson, took up a position that would allow it to flank the alien fleet if necessary." Johnson was the youngest of the three captains at 35, but he had trained for this mission his entire adult life. The alien fleet continued its approach, completely unaware of the three human warships waiting in their path. Admiral Zeth Gorn, commanding the operation from his flagship, was confident that this would be a simple matter of overwhelming a primitive species with superior technology and numbers. "Send a probe to scan the human home system," Admiral Zeth Gorn ordered. "I want to know the exact position of their ships before we arrive." The probe, a small automated vessel designed for reconnaissance, streaked ahead of the main fleet. Its sensors began scanning the area around Earth, cataloging the positions of human vessels and defensive installations. The probe's data showed exactly what the Admiral expected: a small number of primitive ships clustered around their home world, clearly preparing for a hopeless defense. What the probe did not detect were the three Titan-class warships waiting in the darkness. Captain Mitchell received a communication from Admiral Hayes on Earth. Her face appeared on his command screen, showing the strain of the past few days. "Captain Mitchell, the alien fleet will reach your position in approximately 1 hour. You are authorized to engage when ready." "Understood, Admiral." "What about Captain Blake and his crew?" "They're still on the alien station. We'll have to hope they can take care of themselves once this begins." Mitchell nodded. "We'll try to end this quickly." As the alien fleet drew closer, Captain Foster opened a communication channel to both the Titan and the Behemoth. "Captains, this is Foster. We've spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Let's show these aliens what human ingenuity can accomplish." "Copy that, Goliath," Captain Johnson replied from the Behemoth. "Time to introduce ourselves properly." The alien fleet was now close enough that their individual ships were visible on the human sensors. There were over 200 vessels of various sizes, from small patrol craft to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything Earth had ever built. The firepower represented by that fleet could have reduced Earth's entire surface to molten glass, Admiral Zethgorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, a vessel that had conquered dozens of worlds for the Galactic Council. He was confident that the humans would surrender once they saw the size of the force arrayed against them. Most species chose submission over extinction when faced with such overwhelming odds. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "we're detecting 3 large objects ahead of the fleet. They appear to be asteroids or debris." Admiral Zethgorn glanced at the display, showing 3 dark shapes in the space ahead. "Navigate around." We don't have time for obstacles." "Sir, the objects are moving. They're not asteroids." The Admiral's attention focused on the tactical display. The 3 objects were indeed moving, and they were moving with obvious intelligence and purpose. As he watched, they arranged themselves in a formation that blocked the fleet's direct path to Earth. "What are they?" he demanded Dot before anyone could answer. The 3 objects suddenly blazed with light as their quantum drives engaged. The darkness around them disappeared, revealing 3 massive warships unlike anything in the Galactic Council's databases. Captain Mitchell's voice echoed across the communication channels of both fleets. "This is Captain Steve Mitchell of the United Earth Space Command. You are trespassing in human space. Turn around and leave immediately, or we will consider your presence an act of war." Admiral Zethgorn stared at the display in disbelief. The 3 human ships were enormous, each one nearly as large as his own flagship. Where had they come from? How had they remained hidden from the Council's sensors? "Impossible," he whispered. "The humans don't have ships like that." But the evidence was right in front of him, and Captain Mitchell was waiting for an answer. Admiral Zethgorn stared at the 3 massive human warships, blocking his fleet's path to Earth. His aquatic features, normally calm and collected, showed clear signs of confusion and growing concern. The Depth Runner Admiral had conquered 17 star systems for the Galactic Council, but he had never encountered anything like this. "Communications officer, respond to the human vessel," he ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "This is Admiral Zethgorn of the Galactic Council Combined Fleet," his message broadcast to the human ships. "You will stand down immediately and allow us passage to your home world. Continued resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species." Captain Steve Mitchell stood on the bridge of the U.E. Sidon, surrounded by technology that would have seemed impossible to most humans just days earlier. His crew moved with quiet efficiency around stations that controlled weapons, capable of splitting moons. He had spent years training for this moment, but the reality still felt surreal. "Admiral," Mitchell replied calmly, "this is your final warning. Leave human space now or face the consequences." Admiral Zethgorn's patience, already thin from the unexpected appearance of the human ships, finally snapped. "You dare threaten me with 3 ships against my entire fleet? Your arrogance will be your destruction." The alien admiral turned to his weapons officer. "Send the corvette Lightning Strike to disable those vessels. Use minimum force. I want them intact for study." The Lightning Strike was a sleek vessel, roughly the size of Earth's largest destroyer, but packed with technology that had reduced entire cities to ash. Its captain, Commander Zethkai, was a veteran of dozens of campaigns and had never met an enemy ship he could not destroy quickly. "Lightning Strike, this is Admiral Zethgorn. Approach the human vessels and disable their weapon systems. Show them what happens when primitives challenge the Council." Commander Zethkai activated his ship's weapons and began moving toward the 3 human vessels. His confidence was absolute. The Lightning Strike carried plasma cannons that could punch through any known shield technology, and its armor could withstand direct hits from most Council weapons. On the Titan's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Chris Bailey watched the approaching alien ship on his tactical display. "Captain, single enemy vessel approaching. It's charging weapons. Mitchell nodded. Are our weapons ready? Primary plasma cannon charged to 1% power, sir, Bailey replied. 1%? Chief Engineer Kate Miller asked from her station. Sir, even at minimum power, that weapon could... I know exactly what it can do, Mitchell interrupted gently. Fire when ready. The Titan's primary weapon was based on technology reverse-engineered from the ancient derelict ship found in Earth's outer solar system. 20 years of human innovation had improved on those alien designs, creating something that no current galactic civilization had ever seen. The weapon fired. A beam of focused plasma, bright as a small star, crossed the space between the Titan and the lightning strike in less than a second. The alien corvette, with all its advanced shields and armor, simply vanished. Where a fully functional warship had existed moments before, only glowing particles remained, slowly dispersing into space. The silence that followed was complete. Every ship in the alien fleet had watched one of their most advanced vessels disappear, as if it had never existed. On 200 different bridges, alien commanders stared at their sensor readings in disbelief. Admiral Zethgorn felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Genuine fear. What just happened to the lightning strike? Sir, his sensor officer replied, his voice shaking. It's gone. Completely gone. Our sensors show no debris, no energy signature, nothing. That's impossible. No weapon can completely destroy a vessel without leaving debris. But the evidence was right in front of him. The lightning strike had approached the human ships and had been erased from existence by a single shot from a weapon unlike anything in the Council's arsenal. Captain. Linda Foster watched the destruction from the bridge of the U's Goliath. Her ship held position slightly behind the Titan, ready to support if needed. At 42 years old, she had seen combat before, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of an enemy ship simply ceasing to exist. Captain, her weapons officer, said quietly, "The alien fleet is moving into attack formation." Foster nodded. She had expected this. The aliens would not retreat after losing a single ship, no matter how impressively it had been destroyed. Their pride and their belief in their own superiority would force them to continue the attack. Admiral Zethgorn made his decision. All ships, attack formation. We will overwhelm them with numbers. No matter what weapon they used, they cannot possibly destroy 200 ships. The alien fleet spread out across several thousand kilometers of space, presenting multiple targets and attack angles. Ships that had conquered worlds moved into positions they had used successfully for centuries. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Council technology, crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. All ships, Admiral Zethgorn broadcast, attack the human vessels. Use everything you have. The space around the 3 human ships erupted with weapons fire. Plasma beams, particle cannons, kinetic projectiles, and energy weapons that humans had no names for all converged on the Titan, Goliath, and Behemoth. The volume of fire was enough to destroy entire fleets of conventional warships. None of it reached the human vessels. The quantum shielding that protected each Titan-class ship was based on principles that the current Galactic Council had never discovered. Energy weapons simply vanished into dimensional space, while kinetic projectiles passed through the shields as if they were not there. Captain Nick Johnson stood on the bridge of the UES Behemoth, watching the light show outside his ship with professional interest. At 35, he was the youngest of the 3 captains, but his tactical training was second to none. "Engineering, what's the status of our shields?" he asked. "Operating at normal parameters, Captain," his chief engineer replied. "The alien weapons aren't even registering on our systems." Johnson smiled grimly. Time to return the favor. Weapons. Target the enemy flagship. Secondary cannons only. The Behemoth's secondary weapons were designed for anti-fighter defense, using kinetic projectiles made from exotic matter harvested from collapsed stars. Against normal targets, they were incredibly destructive. Against ships designed to current galactic standards, they were devastating. The behemoth fired a single volley from its secondary batteries. 12 projectiles, each one moving at a significant fraction of light speed, streaked toward Admiral Seth Gorn's flagship. The alien ship's shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, might as well have been made of paper. The exotic matter projectiles tore through the flagship's hull like it was made of cardboard. Explosions blossomed along the massive vessels, length as critical systems were destroyed. Within seconds, the ship that had served as Admiral Zeth Gorn's command for over a decade was a drifting wreck. The Admiral himself survived only because his bridge was in the most heavily armored section of the ship. As emergency power flickered on around him, he tried to understand what had just happened. "Damage report?" he ordered weakly. "Sir, we've lost main power, weapons, shields, and life support. We're dead in space." Admiral Zeth Gorn looked at his tactical display, now running on backup power. The 3 human ships sat in space exactly where they had been before, apparently undamaged by the concentrated fire of his entire fleet. Meanwhile, his flagship was dying around him. Captain Foster decided it was time to demonstrate the Goliath's capabilities. "Weapons, target that cluster of cruisers on our port side. Primary cannon, minimum power." The Goliath's main weapon charged and fired. The beam struck the center of a formation of 6 council cruisers, and all 6 ships vanished in a flash of light that was visible from Earth's orbital stations. Captain Mitchell opened a communication channel that reached every ship in the alien fleet. "This is Captain Mitchell of the United Earth Space Command. You have seen what happens when you attack us. We are willing to let the survivors retreat. This is your only warning." But Admiral Zeth Gorn, his pride wounded and his flagship destroyed, was not ready to admit defeat. "All remaining ships continue the attack, ramming speed if necessary. These humans cannot be allowed to threaten Council authority." The alien fleet, reduced now by the destruction of its flagship and 6 cruisers, pressed forward. Dozens of ships moved toward the 3 human vessels, their crews prepared to die rather than admit that a primitive species had defeated them. Captain Johnson sighed as he watched the alien ships approach. "They're not going to listen to reason, are they?" "Apparently not." Mitchell's voice came over the communication channel. "All ships, weapons free. Let's end this quickly." The 3 Titan-class warships began to move. Their quantum drives allowed them to appear anywhere on the battlefield instantly, making it impossible for the alien ships to predict their positions or coordinate attacks against them. What followed was not so much a battle as a demonstration of technological superiority that the galaxy had never seen before. The human ships moved through the alien fleet like wolves among sheep, their weapons destroying Council vessels faster than the survivors could retreat. News of the battle traveled faster than the surviving alien ships could flee. Across the galaxy, species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years received reports that seemed impossible to believe. A fleet of 200 Council vessels, led by one of their most experienced admirals, had been destroyed by 3 ships from a species they had called primitive just days before. On Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours. The massive chamber that had seemed so imposing during Captain Blake's first visit now felt like a tomb. The alien representatives sat in stunned silence as report after report confirmed what none of them wanted to accept. Ambassador Cathvar of the Sorok Empire stood at his seat, his red scales seeming duller than before. "The reports cannot be accurate," he said for the 3rd time. "No species develops weapons of this magnitude without being detected. The sensor logs from the surviving ships all tell the same story. replied the Hive Queen Zarathus. Her compound. Eyes reflected the holographic displays showing the debris field where Admiral Zethgorn's fleet had died. The human vessels used weapons and defensive systems that our technology cannot explain. Captain John Blake stood in the center of the chamber, but his position had changed dramatically since his first appearance here. The aliens no longer looked at him with amusement or condescension. Now their eyes held something that Blake had never expected to see directed at a human. Fear. Captain Blake, Lyris Moon of the Ethereal Collective said, her voice like wind through broken glass. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that were not revealed during our initial negotiations. Blake nodded calmly. That's correct. We told you that humanity valued freedom above safety. We didn't tell you how far we were prepared to go to protect that freedom. The chamber's communication system activated, and Admiral Lisa Hayes' face appeared on the main display. Even through the long-distance transmission, her presence commanded attention. Behind her, Blake could see the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, the ship that the aliens had dismissed as inadequate just days before. Members of the Galactic Council, Admiral Hayes began. I am Admiral Lisa Hayes, Commander of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I believe we need to discuss new terms for humanity's membership in the galactic community. Ambassador Kethfer's jaw clenched. You attack our fleet and then demand to negotiate? This is an act of war against the entire council. No, Hayes replied firmly. This was self-defense against an unprovoked invasion of human space. You gave us an ultimatum: submit or be conquered. We chose a third option. The Hive Queen clicked her mandibles together nervously. What do you want from us? Equal membership in the Galactic Council, Hayes said. Full voting rights, access to council trade networks, and recognition of human sovereignty over our territory. Impossible, Ambassador Kethfer snarled. No species joins the council as an equal. You must earn your place over centuries, proving your worth to your betters. Admiral Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Ambassador, I think you misunderstand our current situation. 3 of our ships just destroyed your most powerful fleet. We have 17 more Titan-class vessels in reserve, along with new technologies that your scientists cannot even imagine. We're not asking for membership. We're telling you the terms under which we're willing to join. The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien representative understood the implication of Hayes' words. Humanity was not negotiating from a position of weakness. They were dictating terms from a position of overwhelming strength. Lyris Moon spoke first, her ethereal voice carrying across the chamber. How long have you possessed these capabilities? We've been developing them for 20 years, Hayes replied. Ever since we found one of your ancient ships drifting in our outer solar system. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Ambassador Kethfer stood up so quickly that his chair toppled backward. Ancient ships? What ancient ships? Blake spoke up from the center of the chamber. A derelict vessel, thousands of years old. Its crew was long dead, but the technology was still functional. We reverse-engineered what we could and improved on the rest. The Hive Queen's compound eyes focused on Blake with laser intensity. Describe this vessel. 2 kilometers long, crystalline hull structure, quantum displacement drive, weapons that could crack planets, Blake replied. Ring any bells? The alien representatives began talking among themselves in their various languages, but Blake could understand the tone even without translation. They were afraid, and their fear was growing by the minute. Dr. Margaret Stone's voice came through the communication system as she joined Admiral Hayes on the display. The ship belonged to a species called the Architects. According to the data we recovered, they were the original builders of the galactic transportation network you all use. They disappeared about 50,000 years ago, but their technology was far more advanced than anything currently in use. Ambassador Kethfer sat down heavily. The architects were legends, stories told to young ones about the ancient builders of the galaxy. Not legends, Dr. Stone corrected. Very real and very advanced. Humanity has spent 2 decades unlocking their secrets and combining them with our own innovations in warfare. Captain Steve Mitchell's face appeared on a secondary display, broadcasting. From the bridge of the UE's Titan, behind him, Blake could see the sleek interior of the ship that had just redefined galactic power structures. "Council members," Mitchell said, "my ship and her sisters are currently patrolling the edge of your space. We're not threatening anyone, but we want to make sure our message is clearly understood. Humanity is no longer the weak species you can push around." Captain Linda Foster joined the communication from the U's Goliath. "We've analyzed the technology of your surviving ships. Frankly, we're not impressed. Your weapons couldn't penetrate our shields, and your shields couldn't stop our weapons." Captain Nick Johnson added his voice from the UE's behemoth. "We estimate that each of our ships could defeat 50 of your best vessels in direct combat. We have 20 ships total, which means we could destroy your entire combined fleet if necessary." The mathematical implications of Johnson's statement hit the alien representatives like a physical blow. The Galactic Council's military superiority, maintained for thousands of years, had just become meaningless. Admiral Hayes spoke again, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. "However, humanity prefers cooperation to conquest. We're willing to work with the Council as equals, sharing technology and knowledge for the benefit of all species. What if we refuse?" Ambassador Kethfer asked, though his voice lacked its earlier arrogance. Hayes' expression hardened. "Then humanity will establish its own galactic government. Other species will be welcome to join us under terms of genuine equality. I suspect many of your client races would prefer that option to continuing as your servants." The threat was clear and effective. The Galactic Council's power rested not just on their military strength, but on their ability to maintain control over hundreds of lesser species. If humanity offered those species a better alternative, the Council's empire could collapse within decades. The Hive Queen was the first to speak. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Full Council membership for humanity," Admiral Hayes replied. "Equal voice in all decisions, access to all trade networks, and mutual defense agreements. In return, we'll share some of our technological advances and help maintain galactic stability." "Some of your advances?" Lyris Moon asked. Dr. Stone smiled. "We're not going to give you our best weapons, if that's what you're wondering. But we have medical technologies, manufacturing processes, and energy systems that could benefit everyone." Ambassador Kethfer looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. The vote they were about to take would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "We need time to discuss this among ourselves." "Of course," Admiral Hayes said. "Take all the time you need. Captain Blake will remain on your station as our representative. I'm sure you'll treat him with the respect due to an equal partner." The change in how the aliens looked at Blake was immediate and obvious. Where they had once seen a representative of a primitive species begging for scraps, they now saw the ambassador of a potential superpower. After the communication ended, the council chamber remained silent for several minutes. Finally, Ambassador Kethfer spoke to Blake directly. "Your species has changed everything," he said quietly. "The galaxy will never be the same," Blake nodded. "That was always our intention. We just wanted to make sure we were strong enough to survive the change." 6 hours later, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership. The vote was not really about choice. It was about survival in a galaxy where the rules had just been rewritten by a species that everyone had called weak. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching as the 3 Titan-class ships took up patrol positions around. Earth, the planet that had once seemed vulnerable and isolated, was now the center of a new galactic power. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving applications for membership in a human-led alliance from 17 different species." Hayes smiled. The galaxy's smaller species, tired of serving as the Council's servants, were ready to try something new.